This is Shades of Content, a podcast created for and featuring women of color who create and distribute content as a means to tell stories to the masses. I'm your host, Patrice, owner of CAMPspace, and I'm passionate about giving diverse women creators a space to be awesome. Let's go. Here we go. I'm so nervous to be doing this, and I feel like my sound is going to be all screwed up, but it is what it is. Hey, beautiful people. Thank you for tuning into Shades of Content. It is visual. Again, this is our second YouTube release, and it's also on the podcast. As you only have the audio version, so you can check it out. I'm in my beautiful space, camp, and this is a solo episode. But before we get into it, I really do pray that this finds you, whoever's listening, you and yours, in a healthy, safe, and well space. Obviously, there's a ton going on in the world, but I've experienced some personal things, another death in my family, which was a shock and really sucked. But so I hope that through all of the things that are happening, you're able to find peace and happiness in the situation that you're in. Because we have to find the good, and we have to listen to things that make us feel good, and we have to take care of ourselves. Because that's the only way that we're going to be able to get through these times and through life, period. You got to take care of yourself. You got to love, and you just have to be good to yourself. So as you know, I'm Patrice, the host of the Shades of Content podcast, and I'm really happy to be here for another episode. I'm also excited because last week we had our 6-month episode. Six. When I started this journey, I had no idea what it was going to lead to, but I'm just really happy that I made it to 6 months. I was consistent. I stuck with it, and I'm celebrating that 6-month anniversary today. So it's also really interesting because it took me a long time to actually release this podcast. So after months of contemplation and feeling really uneasy about bringing this thing to fruition, even I remember my stomach hurting 2 weeks before the podcast launched because I was just so nervous. I was so nervous, but I chose to choose my calling over comfort. And, making that decision was pivotal in where we are today. I don't know if you remember, but March 19th was the day that the podcast launched. It was literally the first week of the mandated stay-at-home order. So everything was shut down. The world was in this, or the nation, because some other places in the world had kind of figured it out. But we were all in this place of stillness and shock and confusion. And I don't know if we were scared at that point, but I think we were just whoa, we get to stay home for a week. Okay. But it was also my son's 13th birthday, so I purposely launched it on the 19th. 9 is a very important number to me in my life, and so I felt like I wanted to launch it on a 9, and so we launched it on March 19th. And these 6 months have flown by like crazy. Zoom, zoom. In that short amount of time, just 6 months, I've really been able to step into this world of podcasting. And when I tell you it's a whole new world, it is a whole new world. So everything from researching to learning to scheduling to reaching out to potential guests to doing all the graphics, the website, the promotions that you see on the social media pages, to designing the website myself. I don't know if I said that already. To confirming, to setting up the Zooms, to hiring an engineer, to sending promotional items to the guests once they recorded the episode, to scheduling episodes, to tracking everything, to figuring out if sponsors make the most sense, to releasing the episodes, to scheduling them on Buzzsprout, to promoting them, to scripting them. I mean, this is all what I've been doing for the last 6 months. And I know it sounds like a really crazy undertaking, how am I able to do it on my own? I really love it. I really enjoy podcasting. It's crazy. I really enjoy interviewing people and learning about them and coming up with the questions that I'm going to ask them and researching them before. It's just been amazing. And I don't really pay attention to the stats, but we're at about 1,500 downloads in 6 months, and I'm really proud of that. Again, I'm not doing this to be the world's most known podcaster. I'm really doing this to share the stories of women content creators of color, because for a very long time, those women, while they were creating all the memes, all the things that we were falling in love with and sharing, and the things that were growing virally, they weren't getting the attention. And I say they, I mean we as well, because I'm a woman content creator of color as well. So it was just important for me to give or provide or create another opportunity for women like me to be great and to be highlighted and to be celebrated. And so in 6 months, I'm doing that, and it feels amazing. And so I'm happy that I started. But I thought long and hard about what this episode would be, and I didn't want it to be like just I did this, I did that, 6 months, I'm lit. No, I felt like it made sense to really talk about the things that I've learned along this podcast journey. And I know it might seem a little premature that I'm having this conversation, but I've learned a lot in 6 months, and I want to share it. So I've compiled a list of the 9 things that I've learned, the 9 most important things that I've learned and tips as I've gone through this 6 months of podcasting. And I'm still very new to this when you think about it, right? Like 6 months is still a baby, right? So my youngest son, who's like a year and a half, is older than this podcast. So, again, I'm still learning, but there are things that I learned along these six months from March 19 to September 19 that I definitely want to share to you, because maybe it'll help you along your podcast journey. Or even I feel like some of these tips aren't just things that can be relevant to podcasting. I think they're relevant to like a lot of different creative businesses or just businesses in general. And so I hope that they're helpful for you. So here we go. Take out a pen and a piece of paper, or open up your notes application in your phone, because you definitely want to jot this stuff down. All right. So number 1, you need to record episodes as much as possible, right? That's the most important thing that you can do. So recording and releasing episodes needs to be top of mind. All the other things are great, but if you're not recording and if you're not releasing episodes, then it doesn't matter. None of it matters. So stick to the schedule and make it something that you can stick to. So Shades of Content comes out every other week. That's typically twice a month. And I did it that way because that was what was feasible for me. So my listeners know that they're going to get a new episode every other Friday. Now, disclaimer, this episode is getting to you a little late, but that's okay. And I'll be honest, like maybe 2 or 3 times in this 6 months, I've released episodes after they were supposed to be released. I'm human. Life happens. I got kids. I got a business. I got a husband. I got a home. So like sometimes I'm not on the schedule, but let's say I don't release on a Friday. Let's say it doesn't come out until that following Monday. I don't push anything back. Like we still stick to the every other Friday, and I just make sure that I come back hard and I stay on the schedule. So number 1, release episodes and record as much as you can. You want to keep that content coming out consistently, because new people are finding your podcast all the time, and you want to make sure that there's always something new and fresh for them to get. Number 2, find a scheduling platform that works for you when you're trying to schedule interviews. Now, if you are a solo-based podcast, I don't know if this number 2 will be relevant to you, but if you're a podcaster that is interviewing people like I do on Shades of Content, scheduling is important. So I've decided to use Calendly. Calendly, I believe, is an app or software that was founded by a Black man. Shout out to him. But what I do is I set up a calendar in my Calendly page, and I probably paid maybe like $100 for the entire year. That was an investment that I felt like was worth it. And when it's time for me to interview people, or when I send them that interview request email, I also include the link, and I say to them, you can click this link to pick the time that works for you. I've already went in on the back end and blocked out or selected the dates and the times where I want to do Shades of Content interviews. So I only do Shades of Content interviews on Thursdays and Fridays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So that's the only availability that a possible or a potential interviewee is going to see. And I've also made it so that they cannot book any farther than 4 weeks out. So if I'm emailing you, I want to interview you within the next 3 to 4 weeks, if not before. So they only have a finite number of dates, a finite number of times where they can pick, and they do it. They click it. I get an alert. They get an alert. We both get calendar invites. We both get calendar reminders. They also get a text. But all of this stuff is happening, and I don't have to do anything. Once I send them that email to ask them to be on the show, they click it, and we're done. So that has made the process so much easier. I'm not even going to say spend. You waste a lot of time when you are sending an email to someone. Hi, when are you available? Let me check my calendar. Okay, I'm available on this date. Let me check my calendar. I'm not available. Cut all of that out. That wastes time that you could be recording more episodes or scripting out more episodes. So that's number 2. Definitely get you a scheduling platform that can take all of that out. And if you look in the show notes, there's a link to my Calendly page, which I believe has some type of discount or something that you can benefit from if you don't already have something that you use. Number 3, save money where you can, but know and be clear on where you need to invest. So that's a 2-parter, but it's all about money, so it's all in one. So the first part, save money where you can. I did not hire a graphic designer to do any of the branding that you see. I have a marketing and communication background, so I'm gifted in that area. So that's where I knew I could save money and use my own talent. So I designed the logo on Canva, and I designed the website for shadesofcontent.com on Squarespace. Again, didn't pay anybody to do any of that stuff. I just pay a Canva. I pay a monthly fee, I believe, of $20, which is useful because I use that for all of my businesses when I want to do graphic design projects really quickly. But Squarespace, I already had an account. No, I take that back. I started another account through Squarespace for their hosting and all their templates. And I think I pay like $120 for the year for the Shades of Content website. But all the things that come with it. So you're not paying extra for anybody's time. You can use those templates. So I save money there on that. But I'm a marketer. I'm a communications person. I'm a branding person. I am not a podcast engineer. Okay. So I pay my amazing engineer, Ty Littman, who is also linked in the show notes, to edit every episode. And he's amazing. And I don't mind paying him because I remember I learned how to use GarageBand, and I called myself editing an episode. And it took me 4 hours to figure out how to do all of that. And so that's a waste of my time. I can pay him his fee, which depends. Sometimes it's $50 an episode. Sometimes it's $100. But I can pay him to do what he needs to do. He gets it done in an hour. He sends it back to me. I can only think of 2 times when I had to make an edit where he had to go back. He's bomb, and it's a quality product. So number 3, save money where you can, but invest in the things that you know you need to invest in. Number 4, and on that note, I want to make number 4, get a great engineer. Ty is amazing. And he and I crossed paths a few years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, because I was thinking about podcasting, wanted to have a podcast studio in the space, but it just never panned out. But I also believe timing is God's timing, right? You got to always just rely on God's timing. So the timing was right, and I needed an engineer, and I had talked to someone before. It wasn't really working, and we were going to barter. And things just wasn't flowing the way I needed it to flow. Reached out to Ty, and it's been like butter. Like, we just work so well together. And so, aside from him being an amazing podcast engineer, he's a pro at this. Like, his whole career is engineering podcasts. Like, our energy just syncs. Like, he's super positive. He's super cool. He responds to my text messages. He gives me feedback. He responds to emails quickly. Like, we just really work well together. We have such a cool relationship. And I've linked to his contact info in the show notes. So definitely check him out. I don't know if he's taking on new clients, but if he's not, he can refer you to someone who is. Number 4, make sure you have an amazing engineer. That's if you're not doing it yourself. If you're doing it yourself, more power to you. But I don't have the time to do that. I have a whole business that I have to run outside of the podcast. And I'm so happy that I can rely on him to get it done. It's been amazing. Okay, number 5. I never knew you actually had to host your podcast on a platform. I learned that when I took Nicaila Matthews' podcast moguls class. And she gave, some options for sites to use. But for me, number 5, Buzzsprout is amazing. That's Buzzsprout. They are a podcast platform that has made uploading episodes, editing show notes, all the things that you have to do when you want to take this podcast episode and push it out to the world. Buzzsprout makes it so easy. So my tip for number 5 would be to use Buzzsprout. If you know some other ones, use those, but Buzzsprout has been everything for me in Shades of Content. All right, number 6. 3. Okay, repurpose content. Shades of Content has a website, social media pages, and it's available via 5 or 6 podcast platforms. That means that the messaging and the content that goes along with the actual episode has the potential to have to be written out 5 or 6 times. But no, we don't do that. When I initially script out the episode, I'm putting in messaging that I know I can copy and paste into the blog post. And that blog post content, that's what you read. It's basically the show notes. It's the same. So if you're on our website and looking at the episode and listening there, you see the same text that you see in the Apple show notes or the Spotify show notes. Like that's all the same, repurposing content. And then I'll often take clips of that and put it as the social media text in the captions. So just repurpose everything that you have so that you can work smart, not harder. And I'm not at this point yet, but I've definitely seen podcasters who have, been podcasting for a year, repurpose episodes, rewind, post it again, share it again, because, with every episode or with every week or with every day, you're getting new people who are discovering what you're doing. And, yes, you can write new things, record new things every single week, but I don't think that's working smarter. I think that's working harder. So just be thinking about ways that you can repurpose content. And I'll give you another hack for me anyway. So I own a business called CAMPspace, and we're here right now. Hey, Camp. People rent this space out hourly to record their content. And Camp has been around for 2 years before Shades of Content. But because Camp is a content studio, I have a ton of content. I have a ton of pictures. I have a ton of video that I have either shared via Camp social media or that I haven't. And a lot of times I'll take pictures from the space and I'll put it on, say, Shades of Content's Instagram pages and social media pages. Again, repurpose content, use it over again. Even if it's people who have seen it 2 times, 3 times, a lot of times they're not going to remember, right? Because we forget things so quickly in the world we live in. So that would be number 6, repurpose content. Okay, number 7. My number 7 tip would be, and this is a big one, go to your network first. Go to your network first. 75% of the women that I've interviewed on Shades of Content are my friends, people that I know, people that I've worked with in the past. And, I just value these women just because of who they are and what they do. And I value them whether or not I have a podcast or not. But when I decided to create this podcast and I was, planning out what these episodes would look like and the messages that I wanted to get across and the things that I wanted to educate my listener on, I thought about my friends. I thought about my network, and I plugged in the first 20 episodes with people that I knew. That's a blessing. And yes, I could have went and sent all these random emails to all these influencers and bloggers and vloggers that I didn't know. And don't get me wrong, some of the guests on the show are people that I don't know, and I reached out to them just off the strength of I believed in what they were doing in relation to the podcast. But I made a very conscious effort to connect with the people that I knew because, like, my circle is lit. Like, I have been in the space and been knowing content creators before content creation was even a thing. And so I thought that it would have been irresponsible of me not to reach out to these women who are my friends and provide this platform for them to tell what they're doing. But, it's an honor to be able to talk to them, and for them to trust me telling their story on the podcast to their audience. So I just think that sticking with your network and going there first is so vital and so important. And for real, like, this is how, because my friends wanted to be on the show, that's how Shades of Content has been positioned to win. Like, again, it's about this trust, them trusting me, them valuing this platform, but me also valuing who they are and what they bring to the world. And so it just kind of all works together. So definitely go to your network first. That would be tip number 7. All right, we're getting down to number 8. Yeah, I'm crazy. Okay, so be strategic. For some people, their podcast is their big business play. It's not for me. My big business play is this space that we're in right now. CAMPspace is the hub for women content creators of color. And my goal is to grow to more locations across the country, maybe across the globe. I want to have a thriving digital network of content that highlights women of color content creators all day, every day. I want to create technology that makes booking spaces like mine as easy as possible for women creators of color. So that's my big business play. The podcast is just a marketing tool. And I'm sorry, the podcast is a marketing tool to bring eyes to the big business. The fact of the matter is I have a brick and mortar business. And if you're not in this local vicinity, you can't come here and you might not even know about it. Like if you're all the way in, Tulsa, Oklahoma, checking for a content studio in DC might not even be on your radar because that's just how things work with algorithms and location and all that stuff. But my podcast can reach you easy. And so this business or this podcast that you're listening to or that you're watching is a marketing tool for the bigger things that I'm trying to do. And so I say that as number 8, I say that as a tool to always be thinking like bigger picture. Yes, having a podcast is great. And I know a lot of people who have taken that podcast as the initial business tool and really grown it to some really amazing things like Earn Your Leisure, right? They have a podcast, but through that podcast, they have, courses, they have a school, they have merch. Again, also Side Hustle Pro, which is a podcast that I've been listening to for years. It started out as I think she was a blogger first, and then she had the podcast, and that's just like extended to so many other opportunities. I think that's the goal. And like I said, for me, my business existed way before the podcast, but I knew that if I had a podcast, I could reach so many more people who may or may not come through the doors of here. But, maybe when I'm in Dallas and they are listening, then I can connect with them. So I just say always have like a bigger business play for this podcast. And if you don't, that's okay too. But for me, it was really about being strategic and always remembering that no matter who I bring on the show, there has to be like some next steps. There always has to be some strategic next plays in my mind for the conversation that we're having, be it, something else I can promote, something that they can promote. There have been guests on the show who they've been on the show, but then they've booked the space to do the product shots for their business that they're launching. So now every time they've been on the show, that's great. But now every time they're promoting their business, people are seeing the photos that they took in the space. So now people are seeing about their product, but then seeing about the space that I own. So just kind of be always thinking strategically in anything you do, especially with your podcast. That would be tip number 8. Last but not least, number 9, that went quick. This is a short episode, but I like to get it in, get nitty gritty. Okay, last but not least, definitely not least, because this is probably one of the most important things that you can do. Value your own story and tell it candidly. I'll say that again. Value your own story and tell it candidly, okay? I spent 15 plus years behind the scenes as a PR person, partly because I really do love sharing and telling the stories of brands and building brands. Like I love doing that. But I just realized not so long ago that I also was really comfortable being behind the scenes because I was scared to push myself forward. I was scared to step out of my comfort zone and show up as myself. So I would be the behind the scenes PR person. Don't take no pictures. Don't do this. Don't do that, because I was just living in my comfort zone. And one of the reasons why I was so afraid to launch this podcast is because I didn't want to step out of my comfort zone, because I didn't know what people were going to say about me. I didn't want to be another podcaster. Everybody got a podcast. I was scared of my voice. I didn't know how I was going to look on camera. Like, the fear was real, but I had to step out, right? And I had to be willing. Once I stepped out, I had to tell my story 100%. And I think this podcast has been successful because people just are connecting with the real me. This is really how I talk. I don't put on. The shit that I say on this is the same shit that I say when I'm kikiing it with my homegirl. Like, legit, when I listen to the replays of the podcast, I laugh at myself because it's just me. It's 100% me. And, having this podcast, and it makes me do that. This podcast is making me tell my story. This podcast is making me tell it very candidly and being 100. And it's scary, but it feels great. And so, like, I know that my story is valuable. And because I was able to find a podcast topic that literally is me, content creators of color, I'm able to weave in my story really easily. And it's funny because the most watched or most listened to episode so far has been the CAMPspace story. It's, I think, episode number 3 is early on, but it's the episode where I just talk about how this space came to be. That's been my most listened to podcast episode. And I think it's just because it's just telling the story. It's telling the story of all of this stuff. And it's just me keeping it 100, keeping it $1. So your story is really valuable. You need to value it. And, if you have a podcast, but you know that you're kind of still hiding behind this podcast, I challenge you with this episode to really think about a way that you can step out. And I think you already know how you can step out of that behind, because listen, podcasts, people don't see you. People don't see you. They just hear you. But I do believe that when people can see you, they're able to much better connect with you, which is why I'm deciding to really push out more video content. And to be really 100, this podcast was supposed to be video all along. But COVID happened and we had to dial back because we couldn't actually figure out how to interview people. I figured that out now, and I'm probably not gonna like the way I look in this video, but it is what it is. That's how I look. Who cares? My face is not beat. It's cool. The content is what people care about, and I'm learning that. And that feels great because I know that I'm pushing out content. I know that I'm just being me, and it's a beautiful thing. So that's it. Those are the top 9 things that I've learned after podcasting for 6 months. When I tell you I had no idea that Shades of Content, what it would be, I really, really mean that. I knew what I wanted it to look like. I knew who I wanted to talk to, but I didn't know that it was going to connect with the people that it's connected to. And I didn't know that it would be received so well. And I'll tell you this, I'm so excited. Shades of Content was just nominated for a Black Podcast Award. Woo-hoo! In the Best Business Podcast category. Straight up, I don't even consider this a business podcast, but I guess it is because I'm spitting game. I'm giving out free game, and the people that come on the show are doing the same. And it's amazing. So I don't know if we won yet. By the time this episode comes out, I don't know if the winners will have been announced, but I'm just thankful. I had no idea that would happen. And it's all because, like I said, I chose my calling over comfort. And I hope that the 9 things that I listed in this podcast help you do the same. because even if you already have a podcast, like there's so much more that we can do. And I challenge you to do that. I challenge you to work smarter, not harder. I challenge you to be strategic. I challenge you to invest where you need to invest, but save money. Don't just throw money out just because you have it. No, like be smart with everything that you do. Pause for the cause. Okay. As always, thanks so much for tuning in. And please share this episode, share this video, share this audio with your people on social media. Please tag me at Patrice Camo. Please tag the show at Shades of Content. And yeah, tag us so I can see it, so I can know kind of how you guys are taking in the content and how it's helping you. Definitely leave us a review, like leave the show a review, because I want to know how I can be better. I want to know how the show can be better. I want to know who you want to hear and see on the show. I have some fun interviews coming up like in the next 2 or 3 months that I'm really excited to push out. And, but I just want to know like how this is helping you. And then if you could leave a rating, that would be great as well. Also hit the subscribe button. So if you're watching this, hit the subscribe button. If you're listening to this and you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, please do that. Thank you so much. It is an honor to be here. I thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for getting us to 6 months. I say us. I mean, it is just me, but it's like all the people that I interviewed too, and it's you guys as well. This has been great. Thank you. See you next time.
Shades of Content is brought to you by and recorded at CAMPspace, a content creator studio for women of color. To learn more, visit www.campworkspace.com.